The pale blue glow from her skin lit the dark room as Zira paced back and forth. Her tall, slender body moved with unnatural grace, her forearms wrapped around herself in a protective gesture. The human they called Kate slept peacefully, unaware of the turmoil in her alien companion's mind. Zira remembered the day the Galactic Council had given her to Kate as a punishment, disguised as a diplomatic gesture. The Council thought it hilarious to pair a high-born Zentari female with a primitive human. The ultimate humiliation for someone of her status. Kate worked as an engineer at the Earth Embassy on Proxima Station. She lived alone in her small quarters, and according to Council intelligence had no family, no mate. She was perfect for their cruel joke. Give the rebellious Centauri noble to a human, let her suffer the indignity of serving a lesser species. The first weeks had been awful. Zira refused to speak, refused to eat. Kate never forced her, never commanded her. The human simply left. Food set up a separate sleeping area and went about her business. Each night Kate would talk, not demanding responses, just talking about her day, her work, her thoughts. Zira grew curious despite herself. The human didn't fit the savage brute stereotype. She'd been taught Kate was gentle, intelligent, kind. She created beautiful things with her hands, fixed broken machinery, sang softly while she worked. When the station suffered a critical failure in its life support systems, Kate had worked 30 hours, straight alongside other engineers. Her small human body pushing beyond its limits to save everyone, including the aliens who looked down on her kind. It was during the third month that everything changed. The Galactic enforcers had come to inspect Kate's quarters to ensure she was properly controlling her alien servant. Kate had stood between them. And Zira, those enforcers can visit my quarters when they present a legal document signed by both Earth representatives and Zentari officials. She had said, her voice calm but unyielding. Until then, Zira is my guest, not my servant, not my slave. Get out. The enforcers had left, confused by the human's defiance. Zira had been stunned. Why did you do that? She asked, speaking directly to Kate for the first time. Kate had smiled, a small, sad smile. Because you're a person, not property, not a joke, not a punishment. You're a person. 6 months later, they had become something like friends. Kate had taught Zira about human customs. Zira had shared stories of her homeworld. They cooked together, watched entertainment programs together. Kate even cleared space in her workshop so Zira could practice her own art. The Zentari had forearms which made her exceptionally skilled at detailed craft work. She could weave light into patterns that told stories, creating illuminated sculptures that cast moving shadows on the walls. Kate would watch entranced as Zira worked her native art. One night, as they sat together sharing a meal, Kate asked about Zira's family. Back on Zentar. Zira grew quiet, her luminescent skin dimming slightly. My family are the ones who agreed to this arrangement. She finally said, they saw my progressive ideas as dangerous. My belief that Zentari should interact more with other species, learn from them rather than rule them. They were happy to have me removed. Kate had reached across the table, her 5 fingers gently touching one of Zira's 4 hands. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm not sorry. You're here. Their relationship shifted, gradually from reluctant companions to something deeper. They began to share more personal thoughts, dreams, fears. Kate confessed her loneliness before Zira arrived, how she had volunteered for the distant station assignment to escape painful memories. On Earth, Zira revealed more about Zentari culture, the rigid hierarchy, the expectation that females of her station would marry powerful males to strengthen bloodlines. She explained how she had rebelled against these traditions, advocating for a more open society, one where Zentari would share their advanced technology with other species rather than hoard it. The council had made an example of her, stripped her of her rank, and sent her to serve a human, a species the Zentari considered barely civilized. That night, Kate and Zira stayed up until station dawn talking, and for the first time since her arrival, Zira felt she might have found something valuable in this exile, a true friend. The trouble began when other humans on the station noticed the changing dynamic between Kate and her alien companion. Some were supportive, others suspicious. A few reported back to their superiors, that the arrangement seemed to be failing in its intended purpose. The Zentari was not being humbled, but rather seemed to be forming an inappropriate bond with her human keeper. The station commander summoned Kate to her office one afternoon. Zira waited anxiously in their shared quarters. When Kate returned, her face was tight with anger. "They want to reassign," she said, pacing the room. "They say the experiment isn't working, that you're not being properly disciplined." She stopped, her hands clenching into fists. "It's ridiculous. You're not an experiment. You're a person." Zira felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What will happen to me?" Kate looked at her eyes fierce. "I won't let them take you." That night, Kate contacted friends in the diplomatic corps, seeking advice, leverage, anything that might help them fight the reassignment. She called in favors making, impassioned pleas. She even reached out to sympathetic Zentari officials who opposed the council's hardline policies. Zira found her the next morning slumped over her communication console, exhausted but smiling. "I think we've bought some time," she said. "I found a legal loophole. The original agreement specified that you were assigned to me personally, not to the station. If I request a transfer, they have to keep us together unless they want to create a diplomatic incident." Hope flared in Zira, but then faded. "Where would we go?" "Earth," Kate said. "My homeworld. It's not perfect, but there's more freedom. There more diversity. You wouldn't be the only alien trying to build a new life." The thought terrified and excited Zira. In equal measure, Earth the human, homeworld a place she'd only heard about in lessons, usually as an example of primitive chaotic development. But Kate would be there. Kate who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. Kate who had defended her, Kate who looked at her now with such hope. They began making preparations quietly. Kate applied for a transfer, citing family reasons. She packed essential items slowly, so as not to raise suspicion. She began teaching Zira more about Earth, its cultures, customs, weather, preparing her for what they might face. 2 weeks later, when they believed everything was in place, disaster struck. Kate was called away to an emergency repair in the lower levels. When she didn't return after several hours, Zira grew concerned. She used the communication panel to try to reach her but received no response. A harsh knock at their door made Zira jump. When she opened it, she found 3 galactic enforcers, their expressions grim. "By order of the Galactic Council, you are to be removed from human custody," and reassigned. One of them stated, "Your human has been detained for interfering with council business." Zira's blood went cold. "Where is Kate? What have you done with her?" The enforcer ignored her questions. "You have 10 minutes to gather your personal belongings. Then you will come with us." Panic rose in Zira's chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. She needed to think. Kate had prepared her for this possibility, had given her instructions on what to do if they were separated. She gathered the few possessions that mattered to her, including the small communication device Kate had built for her, hiding it within the folds of her clothing as the enforcers escorted her through the station corridors. Zira noticed something unusual. The normal bustle of activity seemed subdued. Station personnel moved with purpose, their faces tense. Some nodded slightly as she passed a gesture she didn't understand. They reached the docking bay where a small council ship waited. Zira felt despair wash over her. She was being taken away from the only person in the galaxy who had shown her true kindness. Her friend, her Kate. As they approached the ship, a station-wide alarm suddenly blared to life. Emergency lights flashed. The enforcers looked up, startled, reaching for their weapons. Then the station power flickered once, twice, and went completely dark. Zira felt someone grab her arm, pull her away from the confused enforcers. A voice whispered in her ear, "Run." In the darkness, Zira could barely see, but she recognized the voice. It belonged to Lily, one of Kate's engineer friends. The human woman pulled her through the docking bay into a maintenance corridor. "Stay quiet," Lily whispered as they moved swiftly through the narrow passage. "We don't have much time." "Where is Kate?" Zira asked, her voice barely audible over the continued alarms. "Detained in security," Lily replied. "But we have a plan. The Engineers Guild won't stand for this. We take care of our own. They reached an intersection where two more humans waited. Zira recognized them as Sam and Diane, also engineers who worked with Kate. They nodded grimly at her, then gestured down another corridor. This way, Sam said. The security section is 2 levels down. As they moved deeper into the station, Zira realized they were using paths she had never seen before, service tunnels and maintenance shafts that wound through the station's infrastructure. This was a side of Proxima Station tourists and diplomats never witnessed. The working guts of the massive structure. Is this not against your laws? Zira asked as they paused at a sealed doorway, Diane working to override the lock. Will you not be punished? Sam gave a short laugh. Some things are more important than rules. When the Galactic Council starts detaining our people for helping their friends, we have a problem bigger than rule breaking. The door slid open, revealing an elevator shaft but no elevator. Diane pulled equipment from her pack and began setting up a pulley system. Zira looked at the humans with new appreciation. They were risking their positions, their freedom for Kate, and by extension for her, an alien they barely knew. Their loyalty to their friend outweighed their fear of authority. It was something rarely seen among her own kind, where hierarchy and protocol ruled supreme. The descent through the elevator shaft was terrifying. Zira had never done anything like it. Her forearms clung to the rope as they lowered themselves in near darkness. Only the faint blue glow from her skin provided any illumination. The humans seemed unfazed by the dangerous climb. Moving with practiced efficiency, they reached the lower level, and Diane again bypassed security to open the shaft doors. Security. We'll be on highest alert, Sam explained as they slipped into another service corridor. Since you're council property, they can legally hold Kate for interfering. But they can't hold her forever. We just need to create enough confusion to get you both to the transport, Zira. Questioned, Lily nodded. Kate had arrangements in place. Before they detained her, she managed to secure passage on a cargo vessel leaving for Earth. The captain owes her a favor. She saved his ship last year. They reached another intersection, and Sam consulted a small device. The security center is through there, he pointed. Right now, they're dealing with multiple system failures throughout the station, power outages, communication disruptions, environmental controls. Going haywire, you caused all that? Zira asked, amazed. Diane smiled grimly. Engineers know how things work. We also know how to make them not work. They approached a sealed door with a security panel. Sam attached a device to the panel and began working. We have about 2 minutes before the system recognizes the intrusion. Zira felt fear and hope battling within her. What would happen if they were caught? Would these humans face execution for helping her? The thought made her luminescence dim with distress. The door slid open, revealing a detention area with several cells. Most were empty, but in one, Kate sat on a bench, her head in her hands. She looked up as they entered her eyes. Widening, you shouldn't be here, she said. Standing quickly, they'll detain all of you. No time to argue, Lily replied as Sam went to work on the cell door. The station is in chaos, but it won't last. Security will figure out what's happening soon. The cell door opened and Kate rushed out, embracing Lily. Then Sam and Diane. Her eyes found Zira and relief washed over her face. I was so worried they had already taken you. We need to move now, Sam urged. The cargo ship leaves in 20 minutes. They retraced their steps through the maintenance corridors, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. Kate kept close to Zira, their hands occasionally brushing as if to reassure each other they were still together, still safe. When they reached the cargo bay, Lily produced identification cards. These will get you past the dock. Security, she explained. They've been programmed to show you as maintenance workers assigned to the ship. The captain knows to expect you. Kate embraced each of her friend's, tears in her eyes. I can't. Thank you enough. Just send word when you're safe on Earth, Diane replied. Now go before security gets systems back online. The cargo vessel was enormous compared to the passenger ships Zira had seen. Designed to transport goods, not people, it had little in the way of comfort. The captain, a gruff older human named Carla, met them at the airlock. You caused quite a commotion, she said, looking at Kate Proxima. Control is scrambling to make sense of all the system failures. Will it cause trouble for you? Kate asked. Carla shook her head. I'm scheduled to depart. My clearance is still valid. They have bigger problems than checking my cargo manifest right now. Get below and stay there until we're clear of the station. The cargo hold had been adapted with basic living quarters, a small section cordoned off with cargo containers contained 2 cots, a water supply, and preserved food. It would be their home for the 3-week journey to Earth, as the ship rumbled to life, beginning its departure sequence. Kate and Zira sat side by side on one of the cots, both trembling from the fear and exertion of their escape. I can't believe your friends risked so much. Zira said Kate. They could lose everything. Kate took her hand, their fingers intertwining, despite the difference in number and shape. That's what humans do for people they care about. We protect each other. The ship lurched as it disconnected from the station. Zira could feel the engines engaging, propelling them away from Proxima, away from the Galactic Council, away from everything she'd known. What will happen on Earth, she asked. Will I be safe there? Will you? Kate squeezed her hand. Earth isn't perfect, but it's not under Council jurisdiction. We have our own government, our own laws. They don't recognize the Council's claim on any sentient being. You won't be property there. You'll be a person. A refugee seeking asylum. The word asylum was unfamiliar to Zira, but she understood its meaning. A safe place, a haven. The ship accelerated, carrying them toward this promise of freedom. She looked at Kate, saw the determination in her human companion's eyes, and felt something she'd never expected to find in her exile. Hope. The journey to Earth passed in a blur of cramped quarters, shared meals, and long conversations. As the distance from Proxima Station grew, so did Zira's anxiety about what awaited them. Kate spent hours teaching her about Earth, its various cultures, governments, climate. Earth is diverse. Zira, Kate explained one night as they shared a meal of reconstituted protein. Not like Proxima Station, where everything is regulated, controlled. We have deserts and oceans, forests and mountains, cities with millions of people, and remote areas where you can be alone for days. It sounds chaotic. Zira said. Kate laughed. It is. But there's beauty in the chaos. Freedom to choose your path. Zira considered this. Freedom was a concept she'd been taught to fear. Growing up, she had learned that strict hierarchy brought stability, that everyone knowing their place prevented disorder. Yet here was Kate, suggesting that chaos could birth something valuable. Will other humans accept me? She asked, finally voicing her deepest fear. Will they see me as a person as you do, or as an alien? An outsider? Kate was quiet for a moment. Some won't. She admitted finally. I won't lie to you. Earth has its share of prejudice, fear of difference, but many will. Many humans are curious, open-minded, eager to learn about other species. And there are communities of non-humans living on Earth already. You won't be alone, Captain. Carla visited them occasionally, bringing news updates, extra rations, sometimes sharing a drink and stories of her travels. She seemed fascinated by Zira, particularly by her ability to manipulate light with her 4 hands, never seen a Zentari up close before. She commented, watching as Zira created patterns of light that danced across the cargo hold walls. Beautiful. What you can do. Zentari light weaving was traditionally used for religious ceremonies and historical storytelling. Zira explained. The patterns she created now told the story of her journey from privileged prisoner to hopeful refugee. 1 week into their journey, alarm klaxons suddenly blared throughout the ship. The door to their makeshift quarters slid open, and Carla burst. In her face, grim Council patrol ship on an intercept course, she said, They're demanding I stop for inspection. Zira's blood ran cold. Kate stood immediately. Is there anywhere we can hide? Carla shook her head. These patrol ships have bioscanners. They'll detect a Zentari life form no matter where you hide. She paused. We have about 20 minutes before they're in range. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. They followed her through the ship to the airlock where the emergency escape pods were located. These pods are designed to sustain life until rescue arrives, Carla explained. but they also have stealth capability to avoid debris and radiation. They can mask life signs. You want us to launch in an escape pod? Kate asked. Carla nodded. It's risky, but less risky than staying aboard. The Council has no jurisdiction in Earth space. If you can stay hidden until we cross the border, their patrol will have to turn back. I can transmit your coordinates to Earth rescue vessels once we're clear. Hours passed with no sign of Carla's ship returning. The small emergency beacon in their pod remained silent. Kate checked and rechecked the systems, growing more concerned with each passing hour. Something must have happened. She finally said, "They must be forced her to continue to Earth." Zira felt fear creeping through her veins. "We have enough supplies for 3 days," she said, examining the readouts. "Maybe 4 if we ration strictly." Kate nodded, her expression grim. The pod is programmed to head toward the nearest habitable system, but at this speed she trailed off, shaking her head. It would take years. They sat in silence, contemplating their situation. The pod drifted slowly, stars shifting in the viewport as they rotated. The reality of their predicament settled heavily upon them. They were lost in the vastness of space with limited supplies and little hope of rescue. Kate eventually broke the silence. "I need to check if the long-range communicator is working," she said. "Maybe we can boost." The signal. She unstrapped from her harness and moved to the pod's small control panel. Removing the access cover, she began examining the communications array. Her fingers worked nimbly among the circuits while Zira watched. The human seemed so fragile. In that moment, her soft skin lacking the protective luminescent layers Zentari possessed. Her 2 arms limiting how many tasks she could perform simultaneously. Yet there was a determination in her movements, a refusal to surrender to despair that Zira found deeply admirable. "I think I can reroute power from life support," Kate said, her voice tense. "It'll give us maybe an hour of boosted communications range, but it means an hour less oxygen. Do it," Zira said without hesitation. Kate worked quickly, connecting circuits, bypassing safety protocols. When she finished, she looked up at Zira. "This might not work," she warned, "and even if it does, there might be no one to hear us." Zira reached out with one of her 4 hands, touching Kate's shoulder gently. "I trust you," she said again. The words had become a mantra between them. Kate activated the modified communicator, sending out a distress call on all frequencies. The pod fell silent as they waited, both staring at the communication panel, willing it to light up with a response. The oxygen in the pod grew thinner as life support diverted power to the communication array. Zira noticed Kate beginning to breathe more rapidly, her human physiology more sensitive to the change Zentari could survive. In lower oxygen environments, one of the advantages of their biology. Without thinking, Zira unstrapped herself, moved closer to Kate, wrapping her arms around the human, sharing the small amount of oxygen her skin could generate. They stayed like that, Kate's head resting against Zira's shoulder, both watching the silent communication panel. The timer showed 5 minutes of boosted power remaining, then 4, then 3. When the panel suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission, both jumped in surprise. Kate lunged for the controls, her fingers trembling as she accepted the communication. A voice crackled through the speakers. "Unidentified pod. This is civilian transport, Stardust. We received your distress call. Transmit your coordinates." Kate nearly sobbed with relief as she sent their position data. The response came quickly. "We've got your location." Stardust pilot said, "Hold tight." We're about 20 minutes from intercept. When the ship appeared in their viewport, it was nothing like the sleek Council patrol vessel or the utilitarian cargo ship. It was small, patched in places, clearly well used. The Stardust maneuvered carefully alongside their pod magnetic clamps, engaging to secure them for retrieval. The airlock cycled, and the inner door opened, revealing a human woman with dark skin and silver-streaked hair. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of Zira, but she recovered quickly. "Welcome aboard," she said. "I'm Captain Grace. You two look like you could use some food, water, and rest." They followed her through the small ship, which seemed to be a converted mining vessel. The living area was cramped but clean with a small galley and 4 sleeping compartments. 2 other crew members nodded to them as they passed a young human male and a Traxian with characteristic ridge patterns on their face. "Not often we find escape pods out here," Grace said as she handed them water pouches. "You want to tell me what happened?" Kate explained their situation, leaving out specific details about the Council and Zera's status. The captain listened, nodding occasionally. When Kate finished, Grace leaned back in her chair. "So you're running from trouble?" she said. "It's not my business." "What kind?" "Everyone on this ship has a past." She glanced at the Traxian. "Crew member were headed to Harmony Colony. It's not Earth, but it's the next best thing. Independent settlement, multiple species, no extradition treaties with anyone. Could be a good place for you two to disappear for a while." Zera looked at Kate silently, questioning. The human squeezed her hand. "We'd be grateful for passage to Harmony." Kate said. Grace nodded. "Consider it done. We should arrive in about 3 days. Make yourselves comfortable." The Stardust was small, but Zera found it infinitely preferable. To the escape pod, she and Kate were given a shared sleeping compartment, barely large enough for the sleeping platform and a small storage locker, but it felt luxurious after their confinement. During the journey, they learned more about their rescuers. Grace had been a military pilot before striking out on her own. The Traxian named Vox had fled political persecution on their homeworld. The young human Eli was simply looking for adventure, far from the structured societies of Earth and its colonies. They made their living transporting goods between independent settlements, occasionally salvaging abandoned equipment or ships. They shared meals together, swapped stories. Zera noticed how easily Kate integrated with these people, how they accepted, both of them without question. It was so different from the rigid social structures she'd grown up with, where individual worth was measured by bloodline and status. These humans and their Traxian companion judged each other by actions, by character on. The 3rd day, Eli called them to the bridge. "Look," he said, pointing to the view screen. "Harmony." The colony came into view, a sprawling settlement nestled in a valley surrounded by towering purple mountains. A river cut through the center, buildings clustered. Along its banks, domes and towers of various architectural styles suggested the diverse origins of its inhabitants. When they landed at the small spaceport, Grace helped them through the minimal entry procedures. No one asked for identification or purpose. All the official wanted to know was if they carried any restricted biological material or weapons. "Welcome to Harmony," he said, stamping their entry permits. "These are good for 6 months. After that, come back if you want to stay longer." Outside the spaceport, the settlement hummed with activity. Market stalls lined the streets selling goods from dozens of worlds. Beings of various species moved among the crowds. Some Zera recognized, others were completely unfamiliar to her. Grace gave them directions to a lodging house run by a friend. The room was small but clean with its own washing facility, a luxury after days in space. Grace also provided them with a small amount of local currency, enough to get them started. "We'll be in port for 3 days, she told them as she prepared to leave. "If you change your minds about staying, we leave at dawn on the 4th. When they were alone, Zera and Kate sat on the bed, both exhausted from their journey but too stimulated by their new surroundings. "To rest, what do you think?" Kate asked. "It's not Earth, but it's perfect," Zera said, looking around the simple room. "Perfect because we're free. No council, no enforcers. Just us." Kate smiled, reaching for her hand. Their fingers intertwined, a gesture that had become natural between them. Despite the anatomical differences, their hands fit together as if designed for this purpose. "We should explore tomorrow," Kate said. "See what opportunities there might be here. I have engineering skills. Those are useful anywhere, and you're light weaving. I saw how Captain Grace was fascinated by it. Maybe there's a place for your art here." Zera nodded, feeling a flutter of excitement at the thought. It had been so long since she'd considered a future beyond survival. The possibility of building something new, creating a life on her own terms, was both terrifying and exhilarating. The next few days passed in a blur of exploration. The settlement was larger than it had appeared from above, with distinct districts, reflecting the various cultures of its inhabitants. They found a central market where artists and craftspeople sold their work, a technology sector where engineers and mechanics repaired and built equipment, community gardens where residents grew, food from a dozen different worlds. On their third day, they visited the administrative center, a modest building where colony business was conducted. A bulletin board displayed notices seeking workers, skilled laborers, and specialists. "Look," Kate said, pointing to one notice: engineers needed for hydroelectric expansion project. Experience with alternative energy systems preferred. Beside it, another notice caught Zira's eye. Cultural ambassadors sought for educational initiative, must have knowledge of non-Earth traditions, arts, and histories. They looked at each other, both seeing the possibility. Neither spoke of leaving when Grace and the Stardust departed the next morning. The decision had already been made silently between them. This would be their new home. At least for now. The hydroelectric project hired Kate immediately. Her experience on Proxima Station made her valuable to the colony. The educational initiative took longer to develop, but eventually, Zira found herself teaching light weaving to students of various species, sharing the cultural significance of the art form in Zentari tradition. Varen pointed at Zira. "This female is the property of the Galactic Council," he insisted. "By treaty and law, she was assigned to human custody and illegally removed. Her presence here violates multiple agreements." "Governor," Maya leaned forward in her chair on Harmony Colony, "we do not recognize the ownership of sentient beings," she said, her voice firm. "Anyone who chooses to make their home here is considered a free person, regardless of their status elsewhere." Another of the Zentari delegates stepped forward. "This is not a matter of colony policy," she said. "This is galactic law. The Council has agreements with Earth, with the Alliance, with all major powers." This female, she gestured dismissively toward Zira, was placed in human custody as part of a diplomatic arrangement. Her removal constitutes theft. Kate, who had remained silent, moved slightly closer to Zira, her presence reassuring. "She has a name," Zira said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. She lifted her chin, meeting her cousin's gaze. "My name is Zira. Not this female. Not property. I am a person." Varen laughed, a cold sound. "I see your time among humans has corrupted you further. Cousin, you forget your place, your duty to our people." "I have forgotten nothing," Zira replied. "I remember every lesson, every tradition. I remember being told that Zentari are superior, that other species exist to serve our needs. I remember being taught that our bloodlines must remain pure, our technology must remain ours alone. I remember being punished for questioning these beliefs." She took a step forward, her luminescence brightening with emotion. "But I have learned new lessons here. Lessons about cooperation, about community, about building something together, rather than ruling from above. I have seen what happens when species share knowledge, work together, respect each other as equals. This colony, this place is proof that the Council's way is not the only way." Varen seemed taken aback by her outburst. The third delegate, a female whose markings indicated she was from one of the oldest houses, whispered something to him. He nodded, then addressed Governor Maya. "The Council will not recognize this colony's claim," he said. "We demand the return of our property. If you refuse, there will be consequences, trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation." "The Council has many ways to express its displeasure." Maya remained unruffled. "With all due respect to the Galactic Council, harmony exists outside your jurisdiction," she replied. "Our trade agreements are with independent worlds, and colonies not with Council-aligned systems. Your sanctions would have minimal impact." But she raised a hand before Varen could respond. "I understand your position and the importance of diplomatic relations. I propose a compromise." The Zentari delegates exchanged glances. Then Varen nodded. "Proceed." Maya gestured to Zira. "Zira has built a life here, become part of our community. She contributes valuable cultural knowledge and artistic expertise to our educational programs. She has formed relationships, bonds. Her presence enriches our colony. I propose that she be granted formal asylum here with the understanding that she will not leave Harmony Asylum. Varen scoffed. She is not persecuted. She is property. May I speak? Governor. Zira asked. Maya nodded. Zira addressed her cousin and the other delegates I was given to a human as a joke. She said, her voice steady. As punishment for believing our people should engage more openly with other species. You thought it would humble me, teach me my place instead. It taught me that your way is wrong. She moved to stand beside Kate, taking her hand. Our differences make us stronger, not weaker. Our diverse perspectives lead to innovation solutions none of us would find alone. I have seen it here every day. I have seen species working together, creating communities, sharing knowledge, and yes, forming bonds of friendship and love that transcend biological differences. Kate squeezed her hand encouragingly. I will never return to being property. Zira continued. We'll never again accept the idea that one species, one bloodline, one tradition is superior to all others. I have found freedom here. If you force me to leave, I will resist. And there are many across the galaxy who would stand with me. Many who question the Council's authority, its rigid hierarchies, its outdated beliefs. The female delegate studied Zira with new interest. You speak boldly for one in your position. She noted. I speak truthfully. Zira replied, as I always have. That is why I was exiled. The delegates conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, Varen turned back to Maya and Zira. The Council does not recognize the concept of asylum for property, he said. But he hesitated. We recognize that forcing this issue could create unwanted attention. To avoid such complications, we might consider a reassignment. Reassignment? Kate asked, suspicion in her voice. Varen nodded. The female Zira was originally assigned to human custody as a cultural exchange, he said. As Governor Maya notes, she now serves an educational purpose here. Perhaps we can formalize this arrangement. The Council could designate her as a cultural attaché to Harmony Colony, officially sanctioned to teach Zentari traditions. Under such an arrangement, she would remain technically under Council authority but assigned permanently to this location. Zira frowned. This sounds like another form of control, she said. Perhaps the female delegate said. But it would allow you to remain here to continue your work, and it would satisfy the Council's need to maintain its authority. Its legal position. Governor Maya looked at Zira. The decision is yours, she said. Harmony will grant you asylum regardless of the Council's position. We will face whatever consequences come. Zira felt the weight of the moment. Kate still held her hand, a silent pledge of support. Whatever she chose, the path of complete freedom would likely mean continued conflict with the Council, possible danger for Harmony, for Kate, for their friends and community. The compromise offered a middle path. Not perfect freedom, but practical security. I will accept the position of cultural attaché. Zira said finally, with conditions. My assignment must be permanent. I must have freedom to travel within the colony to continue my current work and living arrangements. And she took a deep breath, looking directly at her cousin. I must have the right to petition for full independence after a period of service. The delegate seemed surprised by her negotiation. The female delegate nodded. Slowly. These terms are unusual but not unprecedented. We would require regular reports on your educational activities. Documentation of how you represent Centauri culture. That is acceptable. Zira agreed. The details took hours to finalize. The delegates, insisting on formal language-specific requirements. Governor Maya ensuring protections and freedoms were clearly stated. Kate remaining by Zira's side throughout, adding her own insights when technical or legal questions arose. When the agreement was finally complete, bearing signatures and official seals, Varen approached Zira while the others were occupied with final documentation. You have changed, cousin, he said, his voice low. His tone held something Zira had never heard from him before. A hint of respect, perhaps, or simply resignation. Life changes us all, Zira replied. Even you, even the Council. Nothing remains static forever. He seemed about to respond, then simply inclined his head in the formal Zentari gesture of acknowledgement before rejoining. The other delegates, as they prepared to leave, the female delegate paused beside Zira. "I was acquainted with your mother before her passing," she said quietly. "She would have been proud of your strength, though perhaps shocked by your choices." The words caught Zira by surprise. Her mother had been traditional conservative in her views, but she had also been fair, kind in her own way. The delegate departed before Zira could respond. When the council representatives had gone, Governor Maya smiled at them both, exhausted but triumphant. "It seems you have official permission to continue your life here," she said, "though I suspect you would have done so regardless." Kate laughed, releasing tension that had built throughout the day. "We would have found a way," she agreed. That night they returned to their apartment both emotionally drained but relieved. The compromise was imperfect. Zira remained technically under council authority, but the practical reality was that she could continue her life on harmony with Kata's. They sat together on their small balcony, watching twin moons rise over the settlement. Kate took Zira's hand. "I was prepared to run again, if necessary," she said. "To go anywhere. Keep you safe." Zira looked at their intertwined fingers. "I know," she replied, "but I'm tired of running. I want to build something here. Something lasting." They fell into comfortable silence, enjoying the cool evening air, the distant sounds of the settlement preparing for night. The crisis had passed, at least, for now. Over the next year, their life settled into a new rhythm. Zira filed her required reports documenting her educational work, teaching Zentari culture and light weaving. The council seemed satisfied with the arrangement, sending occasional queries, but otherwise leaving her alone. Kate continued her work with the hydroelectric project, eventually being promoted to chief engineer. Their circle of friends expanded. Their home became a gathering place for beings from across the galaxy, sharing meals, stories, ideas. It was during one such gathering that Zira first noticed something unusual. A Centaurian physician named Nala was watching her with professional interest. As the evening progressed, Nala approached her. "May I speak with you privately?" she asked, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the room's light. Concerned Zira led her to the balcony, where Nala turned to her with direct Centaurian bluntness. "How long have you and Kate been pair-bonded?" she asked. Zira was startled by the question. "Kate and I are companions, friends," she said. "We share our home, our lives, but..." The council investigators departed without clear resolution, promising only to report their findings to their superiors. In the weeks that followed, Zira and Kate prepared for the arrival of their child, converting a small room in their apartment into a nursery, adapting designs to accommodate the unknown needs of a hybrid infant. 3 months later, as Harmony Colony's second moon reached its fullest point, Zira went into labor. The process was unlike typical Zentari birth, which normally lasted only hours. Instead, it continued for nearly 2 days. Kate never leaving her side, their friends taking turns bringing food supplies support. The colony medical team, led by Nala, monitoring carefully, navigating the unprecedented event. When the child finally arrived, it was with a soft pulse of light rather than a cry. A daughter with pale luminescent skin like her Zentari mother, but only 2 arms like her human parent. Her eyes, when she opened them, were startlingly similar to Kate's, but with the iridescent quality of Zentari vision. Her tiny hands reached out, grasping Kate's finger with surprising strength. They named her Lyra, after a constellation visible from both Earth and Zentar, a bridge between worlds, just as she was. The first days of her life passed in a blur of wonder and exhaustion, both mothers learning to care for a child whose needs they could only guess. Nala and the medical team conducting gentle examinations, documenting Lyra's development with scientific curiosity, but also genuine affection. Lyra's uniqueness became apparent quickly. Her growth patterns followed neither human nor Zentari norms exactly, but a path somewhere between. Sometimes she seemed more human, needing more sleep, than Zentari infants requiring different nutrients. Other times her Zentari heritage dominated, her skin glowing brightly when emotional, her mind grasping concepts with the accelerated understanding typical of Zentari children. When Lyra was 3 months old, an official communication arrived from the Galactic Council. Zira read it with trembling hands, then passed it to Kate. The council acknowledges the existence of the hybrid child Lyra, it stated in formal language, and recognizes her as a new classification of sentient being, with rights and protections under galactic law. Further, the council hereby grants Zira, formerly designated as diplomatic property, full independent status, in recognition of the unprecedented biological development. Kate read it twice, her expression shifting from disbelief to joy. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked. Zira nodded. "I'm free," she said. "Truly free, and Lyra. She is recognized, not as human, not as Zentari, but as herself, a new kind of person." The news spread through Harmony Colony. Celebrations were held. Lyra, too young to understand, became something of a symbol to the residents, a living example of what was possible when artificial barriers between species were removed. As Lyra grew, so did her parents' reputations. Kate advanced to overseeing all energy projects for the expanding colony, her innovative approach to combining technologies from multiple worlds making Harmony increasingly self-sufficient. Zira established a cultural center where traditions from dozens of species were taught, preserved, and allowed to evolve in contact with each other. Her light weaving incorporated elements from many artistic traditions, creating new forms that spoke to the shared experiences of all sentient beings. Lyra, at 5 years old, was a bright, curious child. With her mother's blue, luminescent skin and Kate's expressive eyes, she moved easily between the various communities of Harmony, speaking several languages, learning traditions from multiple worlds. She could create simple, light patterns with her hands like Zira, but also showed Kate's aptitude for mechanical understanding, often dismantling and reassembling her toys. Other couples inspired by Zira, and Kate began to explore cross-species relationships, though few resulted in children due to biological incompatibility. The very attempt to bridge such differences became more common, more accepted. The old boundaries began to blur, not just on Harmony, but beyond. News of Lyra had spread despite the Council's attempts to control information. Some saw her existence as threatening a challenge to traditional beliefs about species separation, genetic purity. Others saw her as a marvel, a miracle, a glimpse of possible futures where differences became strengths when combined. When Lyra was 7, a delegation arrived from Earth, the first official Earth representatives to visit Harmony since the colony's founding. They brought gifts, scientific equipment, educational materials, art. But their real purpose became clear when they requested a private meeting with Zira, Kate, and Lyra. Earth wishes to establish formal relations with the Zentari. The lead diplomat explained, "We believe the time has come for direct communication, rather than working through council intermediaries." Zira was surprised. Earth and Zentar had historically had minimal contact. Most human-Zentari interaction occurred in council-controlled spaces like Proxima Station. "Why now?" she asked. The diplomat smiled, glancing at Lyra, who sat quietly drawing complex light patterns in the air. "Your daughter has become something of a symbol, an inspiration. She represents possibility, a future where our species might work together, learn from each other, perhaps even become family." Kate took Zira's hand. "There would be opposition. Of course," she said. "Many on both worlds who prefer separation fear difference." The diplomat nodded. "Earth is not united in this view. Neither, we suspect, is Zentar. But enough of us believe it's time for change, and we hoped." He looked at Zira, "that you might help facilitate these first steps. You understand both worlds, both perspectives." Zira considered the request. It meant returning to the public eye, becoming involved in politics again after years of quiet life on Harmony. It meant potential conflict with conservative elements on both worlds. It meant risk. But she looked at Lyra, her daughter, happily absorbed in her art, creating beauty that would have been impossible without the joining of two worlds, two traditions. And she knew her answer. "I will help," she said, "but not as a representative of Zentar or Earth, as a mother, as someone who has seen what becomes possible when we move beyond our assumptions, our separations." The Earth delegation seemed satisfied. The first formal, Meetings between Earth and Zentaur representatives would occur on harmony-neutral ground, where Lyra living proof of connection could inspire openness. That night after Lyra was asleep, Zira and Kate sat on their balcony watching the moons rise, the settlement spread below them, lights twinkling against the darkness. So much had changed in the years since they'd arrived as fugitives. Their home had expanded as the colony grew. Their careers had flourished. Their daughter had brought joy they never imagined possible. And now they faced new challenges, new possibilities. Did you ever think, Kate asked, her voice soft, that being given to a human as a joke would lead to all this? Zira leaned against her partner, her luminescence pulsing gently with affection. Never, she admitted. When I was first brought to your quarters on Proxima Station, I thought it was the end of everything I could imagine. My life, my dignity, my future. And now, Zira said, looking out at the colony, at the stars beyond. Understand, it was just the beginning of something neither of us could have imagined, but both of us helped create. She took Kate's hand. Something beautiful. Kate squeezed her hand gently. We should thank the council someday, she said with a wry smile. For their cruelty, their joke gave us everything. Zira laughed softly. The thought of the council's officials realizing their punishment had resulted in not only her freedom, but potentially a new relationship between worlds, was deeply satisfying. Yes, she agreed. We should send them our gratitude, perhaps with a family portrait. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the night stars twinkling in patterns that looked the same from Earth or Zentaur. The universe vast and full of divisions, but also connections. Bridges could be built, walls could fall, different worlds could touch, could create something new. Together, in their daughter's room, Lyra dreamed of stars and light, of machines and music, of Earth and Zentaur and harmony, of a future where being both was not a contradiction but a gift. And in that moment, under twin moons beside the woman who had changed everything, Zira felt something she had never expected when she'd been sent away from her homeworld as property, as a joke, as less than a person. She felt complete. The official delegation from Zentaur arrived 3 weeks later. Their ships, more elegant than the Earth vessels, landed with characteristic precision at Harmony's spaceport, Zara, Kate, and Lyra along. With Governor Maya waited to greet them, uncertain what reception to expect. The lead delegate emerged, a female Zentauri, whose luminescent patterns marked her as a member of the Science Guild, not the noble houses that typically handled diplomacy. She approached Zira with the formal greeting between equals, a gesture that acknowledged Zira's new status. We come seeking understanding, she said. Her eyes moved to Lyra, who stood between her mothers, holding both their hands, and perhaps new beginnings. The meetings that followed were sometimes tense, sometimes inspiring. Representatives from Earth, Zentaur, and Harmony discussing possibilities, treaties, cultural exchanges, scientific collaboration. The path would not be easy. Centuries of separation, suspicion, and propaganda had left deep marks. But in Lyra, they all saw something worth working toward, a future where difference enhanced rather than divided. On the final day of negotiations, the Zentauri Science Guild representative requested a private meeting with Zira, Kate, and Lyra. When they were alone, she revealed her true purpose.